Welcome to the Adventures in CRE Audio Series. Join Michael Belasco and Spencer Burton as they pull back the curtain on everything commercial real estate and introduce you to some of the top minds in the industry. If you want to take your skills to the next level and be part of a growing community of CRE professionals across the world, this is for you.
Hello and welcome back to the Adventures in CRE Audio Series. I'm your host, Sam Carlson, and I'm once again joined by our good friends Michael Belasco and Spencer Burton. What's up, guys?
Hey, yeah.
Not a whole lot.
All right, great. So we have a pretty cool concept today that I'm pretty excited about, and it's based off of a question that I know you guys field lots of questions, whether you're talking with a person on the phone or even via email. Like, how do I get started into commercial real estate? If I'm in some graduate program somewhere, how do I go from graduate program somewhere? How do I go from inception to reality? How do I realize my dreams and my goals of what I want to do? And really, how do I even pick the right way to start? So I think that is kind of like the inception. So we're really talking about how to launch your commercial real estate career and what people should know about doing that. Sound good?
Yeah. Well, let me just add to that a little bit. Even those who are in commercial real estate, maybe they're looking to pivot from construction to acquisitions or what have you. I think a lot of these principles apply there as well.
So, and really this idea for this episode came off, you guys field a lot of questions, right? What is a typical question that you field from your readers?
Yeah. An example I got this week, a former Navy just started an MBA program, has some experience in commercial real estate through the Navy. I think, what are the steps to get a job, maybe at a large real estate investment firm? What does he need to do? What does he need to know? And so from there come quite a few questions. And this is just one example, but we field hundreds of these a year. Right. And so the advice I guess we're going to talk about today is based on those questions. Yeah.
Okay, great. And you guys both have kind of ascended and been able to accomplish that. So I think this is going to be really helpful. I guess, so where do we start? Let's say I'm a business school student, okay, and I'm trying to pick my career path, okay? What should be my first priority? Where should I really start building and creating a plan for myself? Spencer, I'll kind of defer that over to you first.
Yeah, I think there's two important points I want to make. The first is real estate, or your value as a real estate professional, either to an employer or to an investor if you decide to go the entrepreneurial route. Your value is in your deal seasoning and in your network. And the challenge you have being so I'm a business school student,
and I have neither.
No, exactly. Okay. So the challenge you have neither. And there is some way to gain deal seasoning, and you can expand your network, but to a certain degree, you don't have a lot of value in those two regards. And long term, you need to build value in that. And so you have to rely on your technical skills, Excel proficiency, and real estate financial modeling. And you can gain that. Even so, it's really important, given that deal seasoning and your network is so important. It's incredibly important that you choose the right path. So in my experience, right, I spent 10 years in residential development before I went back. Is that those 10 years developing housing projects had very little value in the new path that I chose. And that's because I'd been seasoned in residential development. And all of a sudden I wanted to go first to the institutional side of the world. I wanted to go to commercial for rent investment property. And I wanted to move to the LP side. And so because I was switching tracks in such a way, the seasoning I had before didn't really have any value to future employers. And so if I were speaking to my former self, I would have said, stop for a minute, understand what options exist for you such that you get on the right track from the get-go. And that'll just save you a lot of time, picking the wrong path and then having to start back over again.
Yeah, because time is the biggest resource we have, right? That's what we lose.
Right.
Okay, so we get the right. That's what we lose.
Right.
Okay. So we get the right perspective, I guess, is what I'm kind of gathering, is we get the right perspective and look at our options. What kind of options if I'm in business school, what kind of options might I be considering?
So when we talk to people, it seems everyone wants to go acquisitions or development. And I think that's because, and in fact, when we started our master's in real estate program, virtually everyone either wanted to do development or acquisitions. If you talk to the layperson out in the world and they think of real estate, either they think of a real estate agent or they think of a real estate developer. And those are your two paths in real estate. And that's just not the case. There are dozens of paths or variations of paths that can be taken. And so it's important at this stage where you're thinking about what you're going to want to do, what path you're going to want to take, is to get to understand those. Now, there are some major decisions that you make on that. The first is the property type that you'll specialize in. Now, there are some positions where you're a generalist, but for the most part, long-term in your career, you'll specialize in one or maybe just a handful of property types. So that's something you need to be thinking about. Do you have it?
Is that just based off of what you like, or how do you kind of decide? Like, what are the deciding factors for that, might you think?
That's a tough one to answer because everyone's a little different. I think you discover what property type or property types appeal to you through talking to professionals who are out there and investing in real estate every day.
Is there one that's like really fast paced and exciting, and then maybe one that's like more stable and just kind of easygoing? Might you think of, hey, well, maybe I can kind of pair it with my personality, something like that?
Well, maybe. I mean, on the riskiest property type, whereas multifamily is going to likely be your least risky, or single tenant net lease. So perhaps it has to do with your personality type. Some of it is about the nuances of underwriting, say a retail deal, which is really about the relationship between tenants as well as location, which location is a factor in each property type, and especially important to retail. So some of it is about how the property type is underwritten. Some of it is maybe in your past. We talk to a lot of people who real estate is in their family. Maybe they grew up visiting industrial parks that their parent or family was developing, and they kind of fell in love with industrial. And I know that sounds weird, like fall in love with industrial.
But you guys actually have people that have reached out to you that are in that exact circumstance, right?
When you meet an industrial person, they are industrial.
Yeah.
There's an individual, I won't name his name, but I've met along the way in my career, who this individual knows every big bomber industrial building in the country.
Right.
I mean, he loves industrial. And
so how much, I mean, there's so much power to that. Like the niche information and like the insider, that scope.
Think about the value he has to his employer today.
Well, and there it is right there, right?
Yeah, but to bring it back, really, it's, this exploratory phase that you're in as, let's say, a grad student,
right?
Or you're pivoting, or you're looking to get in. I don't think, and Spencer, maybe you can correct me if you're saying something different, but I don't think it's explore these assets, right? Explore the asset types, for example, right? You don't necessarily need to say at this moment while you're in grad school, retail is it, I'm going for it.
Right.
A lot of synergies between real estate and office, and in a lot of ways there kind of are in some respects. And you can keep yourself open to that. It doesn't mean get so narrowly focused. During your job search, you might find 3 assets or 3 geographies or whatever that you find of interest, and the idea would be hone in on those things, and you can do that and focus on those geographies and position yourself individually for each of these job roles. Like your resumes might be tweaked a little bit, or your responses in your interviews might be tweaked, but make sure you understand the assets, geographies, and other things that Spencer will speak more on. But it's not, I don't think what Spencer's saying is lock yourself into one, or maybe he is, and I'm a little different.
So my broader point is this: as you do deals, right, either development, whatever, you're going to be seasoned in that. and you run the risk of being more laissez-faire about the choice that you make, such that you get 5 years down the road, maybe you went to work for a senior housing developer, and you decide 5 years in, I don't really like seniors. Well, it's pretty tough if you want to transition to retail at that point. Now, you can do it, but what happens is you're going to lose some time in your career as you're having to get seasoned in a new property type, learn a new method for underwriting a different property type. So that's my point. Now, Michael's point is well taken, which is it's tough when you're a student to say, "Oh yeah, I'm an office guy," because you don't know. And so how do you discover what your preference is? Well, internships are the best way. Externships, do as many externships if you can. You can do special projects for people. Get to understand how property type and an interest or a disinterest in a given property type. Talk to people.
Right.
Informational interviews. Just call and ask people, hey, what do you like about what you do on a day-to-day basis? And in doing so, over time, you'll discover maybe an affinity for one property type over another. But again, the reality of it is you may end up choosing a property type that isn't ideal. And if that's the case, try to pivot to the property type you do prefer sooner rather than later. Or you may, as in my case, spend 10 years of your career in a path that really isn't where you want to be long term.
Right. So go ahead.
I just want to add to that. Spencer really hit it when he said, he said, get as much experience as you can if you have the time and the capabilities, especially if you're in grad school. That, I think, is the most underutilized but most valuable thing or opportunity you can do is that you have some time there to do, you have your internship and you need that. That's critical, but there's a winter break. And for me, as somebody who was transitioning from, the construction industry I did a winter internship. I found an opportunity to work during the semester where I got credit to go, help underwrite a defunct grocery store in Ithaca. And it's just anything. Maybe it's the local bank. Maybe they could take you on for an internship. Any sort of opportunity you can get to get real world exposure. And I would almost say at any cost, even if you have a full load of coursework, it's so critical to get that exposure. And I think both Spencer and I were able to get that in grad school. So that is really, it's I would almost caution, there's an analysis paralysis. You're making a decision that is going to impact the rest, potentially the rest of your life. And so getting that exposure up front is good. And it's not to say it's impossible to pivot out. And that's, again, where Spencer will speak more to this, your networking, making sure that, all the network connections you have while you're making them in school. And if you're pivoting out and, chances are maybe you don't, maybe you thought you loved industrial,
right?
And then you realize that you didn't. And, maybe there's a connection there in another asset class with somebody who can kind of give you the guidance to help you make that pivot again. A lot of people do. It's hard, but a lot of people do pivot from one asset type or geography to another. It happens all the time.
Yeah. So property type is one decision that has to be made in one's career. You'll get deal seasoned in a property type. Another, and Michael just said it, is geography. So while there are firms that are national or international, maybe to look at deals across geographies, generally those are limited partners, right? So if you're on the GP side, a general partner, you're working for a firm that's actually out there either on the ground developing property, or you're on the ground sourcing acquisition opportunities. Your value as a GP is that local market expertise. And so if your long-term goal is to get back to South Africa and you're getting deal seasoned in Australia,
right?
You're setting your career back. And so you think about property type, and that's one, but geography is equally as important, especially if you're going,
because there's that nuanced knowledge as well. I mean, in a marketplace, right?
Oh, for sure. And Michael can speak to this better than I could, because he spent good portion of his career on one block in San Francisco, and he knows that block. Portion of his career on one block in San Francisco, and he knows that block better than a lot of people in this country.
Like a 6-block radius, and you get hyper focused.
Right.
You know, I chose development in San Francisco, and you know, it's downtown, the Trans Bay district. I could tell you everything about that district. And it really, you know, you lock in, and I'm day to day on the ground working there. But you know, even to the larger San Francisco, you know, Bay Area, I have somewhat of a functioning knowledge. But I was so hyper focused that, you know, I could tell you all what's going on in all these blocks, but I couldn't tell you, you know, what's happening out in Oakland, or what's happening in San Jose, because you get so in the weeds. I mean, your project takes up 10, you know, a regular day. It could be, you know, 10 to 12 hours. It could be, you know, the regular 9 to 5. It depends. But you are so focused because the projects can be big and they're very involved. Even if they're smaller, you could be doing a 5-unit. They're smaller. You could be doing a 5-unit building. You can be doing an 800-foot tower. The amount of work that goes into these projects in one area, it's a lot to undertake, you know, between managing teams, you know, in all different aspects of the design phase to the legal. You know, you're not looking at deals at that point. You're kind of getting your experience, you know, managing and dealing with teams and you know, having to figure out how to manage experts when you're not the expert in any one thing in particular. So, you know, that becomes in some perspectives limiting, right? Because I don't have a knowledge of the broader world, and now I have to back up and catch up, right? Because you know, like, you know, I said the other podcast, I'm going to be launching my own shop here, and so for me, it's a backup. I have familiar knowledges in a bunch of different cities, and I'm catching up. So you know, but I do have a deep cities, right? Like the entitlement process is never the same.
Right.
I was going to do something in Philadelphia. I was going to do something in San Francisco. But the general idea of kind of managing the team and knowing what you don't know, that's the kind of stuff you get sharper at. But,
right.
Yeah, but the value that a Michael Belasco in a development role brings to the rest of the capital stack, and the reason why he's a sliver of the capital really compared to the total, is because he has hyper market knowledge,
right?
That the capital partner doesn't have.
Meaning a sliver, meaning you're the GP or sponsor.
Yeah. So as the GP, so he's not bringing the bulk of the capital, but he brings the deal because of his local market expertise. He knows and is able to source the deal, and then he knows the architect to work with and the GC to work with, and how to manage concentration in your career. Now, again, another question you have to ask yourself as you're kind of crafting your career, right? Property type is one, geography is another. The third is whether you want to be on the GP or the LP side, right? So GP, you're hyper focused in the weeds, whether it's acquisition, whether it's development, whether you're in a portfolio management or an asset management role within a GP. It's a different type of shop. You're generally specialists in an area or a geography. Mm-hmm. And you get very good at knowing all of these details. Or you work for an LP, which is very much a capital allocator, right? They're representing a pool of capital, and their job is to identify solid GPs and identify solid real estate opportunities to make a return on that capital. The analysis, while still robust, is more 10,000-foot view, relying some on the GP's analysis. They're also having to be more of a generalist in terms of geography. So while even at the LP side, you might specialize in geography, it's actually more in regional specialization than necessarily hyper-local specialization. So, right, as you're crafting that career, you got property type, you have geography, you've got the GP and the LP question. And then the fourth, and this is really the final one as you're thinking about the track that you're going to take, is the type of firm that you work for. Are you interested in going the institutional route, and the educational requirements, the experience requirements are different? Or do you prefer the boutique route, smaller firm, maybe relying more on when I say boutique family offices, smaller firms, and they may not have the same rigor in their experience or education requirements. And so as you're kind of looking at your path, those are really the 4 decisions that have to be made. And as soon as you go down that path, it becomes difficult to
course correct.
Well, I will add,
or at least without taking a step back and losing some progress in your career.
Sure.
The boutique angle compared to the institutional angle is also interesting. And the fact that because it's a smaller shop, it needs to be more nimble, and you have the opportunity to see a lot more. Some of these I do agree that asset type switching, so to speak, is probably, if I was going to rank what the most challenging things are in terms of how to transition later on in the career, and this is just based on people I know and what I've seen, and Spencer and I may actually not have the same perspective, which is actually interesting here. I think asset class is probably the hardest to kind of flip between. I would say boutique and institutional, depending, maybe an easier flip if you have, for example, in the GP side, if you have experience managing, there are a lot of boutique shops that do large-scale projects. If you have experience managing a development with a boutique shop that's doing, even if it's a, 300-unit garden apartment, I'll use San Francisco, out in somewhere in the East Bay, and an institutional shop is looking at,
that's going to have relevance to them.
You can transition there. I believe, and you can transition there. I believe, and I've seen it. And the other thing is, if you are the LP to GP side, if you are familiar with the asset types, and that I've seen successful flips between LP and GP. So it's interesting because we're talking about this now, and it's kind of bringing up these interesting topics. But I think knowing, to Spencer's point, getting clear-headed and spending the time to really understand what you want and keeping everything on the table, but approaching everything with open mind is going to pay dividends for you later. Because the ultimate message is, if you get it right out of the gate, you are going to be way ahead of the game, down the road. Whereas somebody's flipping into another position 3 to 5 years in.
When I started my master's in real estate program, I had already 10 some odd years in the industry. I didn't understand what we're talking about right now, right? I ramifications of choosing one over the other for my career. Now, I knew what type of company I wanted to work for. I didn't actually quite understand how an LP played in the mix. I knew that I didn't want to be in residential for sale development anymore, but I didn't quite understand how you pick a property type. You quickly become branded as a specialist in that property type. And I wish that someone would have sat me down at the time. Not that I would have been able to make a decision. It's like, I want to absolutely, but at least sat me down and explained to me that, hey, if you pick a geography, you're going to be branded as a professional in that geography, as a specialist in that geography. And so you ought to at least put some thought into it before you do it. And we run into professionals all the time, or I run into young students all the time who are like, oh, I'm open to wherever. And that isn't,
that's not the best course of action.
That's not the best course of action. At least put a little thought into it. Maybe you say, I want to be in a gateway market. I mean, that still leaves a lot of opportunity, but it's very different if you're working in a gateway market versus a tertiary market, right?
That's true. And unless, if you are adamant, residential for sale development is your thing, right? You're adamant. And then geography may take a little bit of a second tier seat, but you target the markets you want, and you kind of leave everything out there. Maybe Seattle's where you really want to be. Seattle, and I'm just picking random cities. Seattle, Miami, New York. These are your target markets, right? and they're all over the country. Trying to mix it up here.
But at least you have a
San
target.
Diego.
Yeah.
In San Diego.
There you go.
Yeah. Let's make a full square. There we go.
Go for them. But there's no harm in applying in other places, and maybe there's an opportunity that's so compelling that could convince you. Chances are, I don't know, the type of candidate you are. Maybe the best opportunity for you to start out is in a tertiary market. Maybe that's where you will start and find your niche and be able to grow best. So, this is speaking from personal experience. My option was have targets, and my targets were gateway cities plus Philadelphia. I don't know. Some people might consider
because you're from Philly. You're a Philly guy. Yeah,
it's a tertiary market, right?
Hey, no, but I was like, okay, if there's a great opportunity that happens in another market, I'm willing to consider, and I threw my resume out there, and I was fortunate enough to find a great opportunity in a great city. But there's a lot of people that started and with their eye. I just talked to somebody recently who was in New York City, and their wife got a job in Toronto, and so they made the decision to move out there. She got a great job, and Toronto's where she's from, and he's going out there, and he's looking for opportunities there, and he hasn't found anything yet. And I'm going to keep up with him, but that's his challenge right now, and it's not impossible. Going from a New York City, by the way.
So he's deal seasoned, but maybe not market seasoned, and he still doesn't have the network either.
But he is I feel like Toronto is gateway.
Oh yeah.
So Toronto. So that is a good transition, right? That's a good fit. And
so,
I will agree. Going from tertiary to gateway is very hard.
Very difficult.
So let's talk a little bit about that career pivoter. You guys call it a career pivoter, right?
Yeah.
Let's talk maybe some advice, because we've been talking so far. If you're in business school, and you're really trying to weigh your options and kind of plan your, which direction you're going to go, this is great advice, great information. But let's say, maybe you are ready to pivot. Okay, let's talk about best practices. I think we've kind of touched on a little bit, but maybe a clear kind of steps, maybe kind of some advice there.
Well, someone who's looking to pivot generally has identified where they're pivoting to, right? Not necessarily everyone. Some go back to school and they're lost and trying to figure that out. But for many, it's I'm in New York City. I'm tired of the big city life. I grew up in St. Louis, and so I want to get back there, right? They know the type of property that they want to work in. They know the type of firm that maybe is available to them. At that stage, it's a network. At that stage, it's a networking process. Real estate, and I say this all the time, it's a who you know type of industry when it comes to the job search. I would venture to say, and I don't have any stats on this, that most jobs are not posted on job boards. They are shared. Part of it is
unless you go to the Adventures in Commercial Real Estate Jobs Board.
Every job,
right? Every job is there, right? There we go. All right, sorry, go ahead.
Real estate firms generally are lean, nimble, and so job opportunities in many cases are on an as-needed basis.
Right.
So what often happens is a great analyst leaves or a great associate leaves, and the manager says, hey, who do we know out there that would be a great fit for this position? Right. Maybe they post it. They shoot out an email to their network. Maybe they've been speaking to someone who they already had in their mind, and so when that position came open, they already had someone lined up, right? And so if you're moving to St. Louis, you need to start networking. Mm-hmm. Start getting informational calls, talking to the people who work at the type of firms that you want to end up at. And through that process, you'll find a job.
Awesome. Well, you guys, this has been super helpful. I mean, I feel like I have now a bunch of tools in my tool belt to go out and, land a job in commercial real estate if that's what I chose to do. So this has been amazing. Thank you guys so much. You guys, that is episode number 2. And thank you for listening. And we will see you on the next episode.
Thanks for tuning into this episode of the Adventures in CRE Audio Series. For show notes and additional resources, head over to www.adventuresincre.com/audio series. Would you like to learn real estate financial modeling in a matter of weeks and do it with zero guesswork? If so, the A.CRE Accelerator is for you. The Accelerator is a step-by-step, case-based program designed to teach you exactly what you need to know and in the order you need to know it, so you can gain both the knowledge and experience to take your career to the next level. To see if the Accelerator is right for you, go to www.adventuresincre.com/accelerator.